Hi, I'm Christina Morgan, and this is the West Narrative History, Chapter 5. We're talking about the Hellenistic era and the rise of Rome. In Part 1, we talked about the Hellenistic era and Alexander the Great. Part 2, we talked about Hellenistic civilization. Part 3, we talked about the origins of Rome. Part 4, we talked about the Roman Republic. And now in Part 5, we're going to talk about Rome's Civil War and the Triumvirates. So, Rome's Civil War, we talked last time a little bit about the Republic and how the Republic, there were different factions in the Republic. Well, the new factors of political instability and conflict among this elite, because we had these generals with these armies, this politicized military, led to these strong men having a lot of power, and they wanted to protect their own interests. And this would be against the demands of other strongmen who wanted to protect their interests. And this leads to civil war, a series of wars. Sulla marched on Rome and announced himself dictator, assumed powers. He took power away from the popular assembly and restored the dominance of the Senate. There were also special commands given to deal with more difficult problems because all of these people had sort of the trappings or parts of the republic still. No one took the title of monarch or a position like a king, so they all kept part of the government working as far as decision making and power, but they were still definitely the man in charge or the one who had ultimate authority. After this, we get to Crassus, Pompey, and Caesar. They form an informal alliance, and it's called the First Triumvirate. Triumvirate means three men, basically. And I always say you can think of it as two thugs and the money, because you always have two soldiers and a rich guy. Crassus is the rich guy. Pompey and Caesar are the thugs, the soldiers. So we have, in both triumvirates, you're going to see two thugs and the money. The triumvirate, while it works for a while, it collapses in the 50s. This is BCE, with the death of Crassus and the growing estrangement between Pompey and Caesar. And the conservative members of the Senate encourage this because they are afraid of power. They don't like the power of these two men. So there is a civil war that results in Caesar's defeat of Pompey and his followers in the early 40s BCE. And some of this has to do in Egypt with the relationship between Pompey and Cleopatra and this sort of fear of Egypt and its influence on Pompey. This is a sculptor of Cleopatra, and she'll play definitely prominently in Rome's history. Caesar probably decided that a republic could not govern an empire, and he began making plans to establish a monarchy of some sort. Maybe in league with Cleopatra, we don't know. But Caesar was killed on the Ides of March by the people who think they're reestablishing a republic. There are several famous expressions that come from his assassination. One of them is "Beware the Ides of March," which is sort of like beware danger, being stabbed in the back, kind of. Another is from a line from Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, "Et tu, Brute," which is something he supposedly said because one of his really good friends, Brutus, was one of the men who killed him. So it means, "and you also, Brutus." So, like his best friend betrayed him, kind of thing. But regardless, in the wake of his death, a new alliance is formed, including his 19-year-old grandnephew, who Caesar had adopted, Gaius Octavius, who we'll know as Octavian. This second triumvirate, Octavian, Mark Antony, and Lepidus, so our two thugs would be Octavian and Mark Antony, and our rich man would be Lepidus, that's the money, represented a legal republican institution or a joint dictatorship. So we went from the first triumvirate falling apart to Caesar taking over for a little bit to him being assassinated, and now we've got a second triumvirate. The second triumvirate is going to break down pretty quickly too. As Caesar's adopted son and heir, Octavian outmaneuvers the other two. He's just better, basically, at leadership. Lepidus and Mark Antony Lepidus is really the rich guy. He's not the soldier, so he's at a disadvantage there. Mark Antony allies himself with Cleopatra. They become lovers. This romance causes lots of trouble for his reputation in Rome, and ultimately it's going to be their downfall. Octavian is a skilled at propaganda. He targets Antony and Cleopatra, claims she's a schemer. He defeats them in a civil war. So regardless of what their plans were or what their relationship was, it's used against them. And so at this point, Octavian's by himself. He's the only survivor after all of these decades of conflict. He has all of the resources at his disposal and a lot of recent history from which he can learn. But what he mostly knows is that a stable government is what is needed. So he develops what they call the invisible monarchy. So he's going to rule as a monarch, but no one's going to be able to tell. That's kind of the idea behind this. Will he give Rome a monarchy after 500 years of hating kings, or is he going to be more creative? This is a comparison of Greece and Rome. So, is government of, by, and for the people necessarily the best system? What liberties are free people willing to sacrifice in order to achieve security? Are some prices too high to pay? Can a republic continue to function when the country becomes a global empire? And these are really interesting questions because if you live in the United States, we live in a republic, and we have to think about is our government the best system? I don't know. We don't really always learn that much about other systems of government. We like to think so, obviously, because it's our system of government. But it's interesting to think about, are there other types of government that would work better? And if so, in what situations? Is one form of government right for everyone? So just something to think about. So that is the end of chapter 5. I hope you enjoy learning a little bit about the beginnings of Rome.